Welcome to Beltalota, the officially unofficial podcast for the Expanse on Amazon Prime. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking about Season 5, Episode 8, titled Hard Vacuum. Big titled Colossal Suck. No. If this was Walking Dead, I would definitely be making those jokes and be serious about it. I like this episode. What do you think about it?
Yeah, this episode is... I was delighted. There's a couple points where I was delighted. Like, number one, I was thinking, like, God, how's Naomi going to get this out of the situation? Like, you know, everyone, quote unquote, watched her jump out of the airlock and launch herself towards the ship. And make this like 1 in a million chance to free herself, and she's right next to one of the most powerful warships in the solar system. How will she ever escape? It never occurred to me that people just interpreted that as her dying. You know, like it's like this is the 21st century equivalent of someone jumping out of an airplane. Do you assume that they're going to glide successfully to another airplane? That's not even the same comparison, because, you know, you won't die necessarily stepping outside of an airplane in a split second. You might in deep space. So, and the way it kind of like all the main characters, that's kind of like Naomi's desperation move, right? To throw herself out of an airlock. She almost did it before. She finally fucking did it. And the one guy who saw what she was actually doing died with her. So I was like, okay, that's pretty clever. I had like overthought the situation. And then it was kind of frustrating because I couldn't for the life of me figure out what the fuck she was trying to do. I'm like, oh, she's going to record a new message and hijack the thing and send it over. When that didn't work out, I'm like, is she trying to do Morse code? And it really wasn't until the credit sequence that beat it into my head that she had sliced up the image or the transmission to send a new signal. So I thought that was really clever, and kind of brave to leave the audience that far outside of what the protagonist is doing, so you can feel extra smart when you whenever you figure it out. On subsequent watches, I started really noticing what I considered the artificiality of the situation. And the chain smoker seemed like it was designed as an escape room just for Naomi Nagata to eventually escape, and less of an actual situation that some terrorist band would contrive. I don't know if that's actually true. I'm looking forward to discussing it with you, but like the episode is a couple notches below after that. Everything else is fine, you know. The real politics stuff, seeing the stuff spiral out of control, seeing Avasarala being kind of like the voice for calm and not escalation for once was interesting. And I really thought that the work that Dominique Tripper did with Naomi, not having anyone else to act off of, like she was in her own little bottle episode in another episode, was really good. The stuff where Drummer's dealing with her trauma was all good. So I enjoyed it. I just said that the second time through, I thought, oh man, this just feels a little constructed. What'd you think?
I don't know if it's because this happens roughly the same way in the book, and so I kind of knew what's going through her head, and I knew like that this was going to happen, that I didn't feel like the artificiality around it, because to me this all just made a lot of sense, right? You put anybody else on that ship and they're not getting out of it, but Naomi Nagata, the engineer, the incredible talent, is getting out of this, and not just getting herself out of this, which is the cool part, but also saving everyone on the Rossi, like saving the entire crew. And everybody we care about in the show, except for maybe Avasarala and Amos. So I don't know. I saw it coming, and maybe that let me kind of sit back and relax a little bit more. I was curious how they were going to film this, because it is all in her head, right? Like the whole sequence in the book is just, we're inside her head. We hear what she's thinking. We have that insight. And here, I think it's telling that you said, oh, well, it took until we got to the credits to really even tell what she was doing. That makes perfect sense to me, because I don't know that I would have understood it without that foreknowledge of what was going to happen there. So I think they did a great job filming that sequence, which I think is a hard sequence to communicate what's going on, right? Like, oh, she's between the hulls. Oh, there's no oxygen in there. She has just the oxygen that's in her suit each time she goes in there, and she has to come back to refill on it. That stuff. Like, there's so much going on with just the atmospheric stuff there, the environmental stuff that it takes a lot of thinking, I think, to really communicate that.
Yeah. And I think that they've done enough showing between the hulls work that you've seen Amos go between the Rocinante hull to affect stuff that you kind of know that this is kind of like a demilitarized zone, a no man's zone. And from my previous reading of Tom Clancy, it's how they build military submarines. You have a pressure hull, and then you have an outer hull that's like armor and, contains equipment and stuff that is usually flooded with, it's not designed to be watertight. So it gets flooded. And so I understood immediately, she's going between the like pressure hull that has to keep, has to be airtight versus the outer hull, which has to stop PDC rounds and torpedoes and micrometeor bridge, stuff like that. And that made perfect sense. But you're right. Like, I think a lesser show would have Naomi just talking to herself a lot more. She'd be like, think. I need tools. I need wires. I need to strip a speaker that I can use as a microphone. Where can I find it? And this is just, she has to, you just have to kind of go along. And it felt we just did Castaway, the 20th anniversary of Castaway. And a lot of the chain smoker sequences feels very much like just watching Tom Hanks figure shit out, go back to his old Boy Scout days and figure out how to make fire. You don't necessarily understand everything, but like enough that you can kind of feel clever along with her. It's a great way to tell the story.
And when she is talking to herself, it's all about like getting the rhythm of the message down so that she can be ready to splice it up at the end. Like the parts where she's talking to herself make sense that she would be talking to herself. It's not just for the audience's sake. And then you look at like Avasarala and her stuff this episode with Pastor, is that his name? David Pastor. You talked about how there's Delgado too, right? He's like the other guy in this equation who is kind of the new Aaron Wright. Right. She's like, you mentioned her occasionally being the voice of reason. I think the other time she is way back in season 1, if you remember, when they were going to do like the strike on Mars's gun platforms or whatever it was. And Aaron Wright was pushing for that. Right. And the president, whose name I can't remember, or the secretary general at that time.
Sandoval? Was that his name?
That sounds right-ish. I don't know. But Aaron Wright was pushing him, we got to make this strike, and if we don't get them all, and it'll be a problem. And she was kind of pushing for calm. Hey, let's not rush into this. She's been in this situation before. I feel like lately she's been sort of out of that situation of like being the voice of reason, of trying to calm things down when hotter heads are sort of pushing violence. And here she's right back into it. And Delgado, when he goes into Pastor's office and is just like, we need to kill these people, and I don't care that it's going to look bad. There's a certain like amount of vengeance that he wants, like revenge for what Marco's done. He claims to be impartial and like, this is just what I think we need to do, but you can feel it in his voice that he's very angry. And I don't know what Pastor's going to do, man. The speech at the beginning, I was both impressed and worried by that speech that he gives, because he's so good at it, and he whips up this crowd, and then he walks in that hallway, and I'm thinking, oh God, he's turned a corner. Now he's the evil Aaron Wright who's gonna be out for blood. But then he just kind of turns back into the David Pastor we knew before that speech. So I don't know, man. We'll see how that goes, but Avasarala might have to be the voice of reason for a little while here.
Probably.
Should we get into the recap?
We begin this episode with Amos and Claire e-biking their way towards supposed safety in Baltimore. Someone mentioned that in the live watch last Sunday, that because I was saying motorcycles and they're bicycles, and I thought they were just being funny, but no, these are some kind of e-moped that they're using.
You can get these downtown in any major city right now. They're what are they called? Bluebirds or something?
Are they? No. I haven't seen the e-bikes. I've seen the scooters, but I haven't seen the e-bikes.
Yeah, so it's both.
These are a thing, and they're taking them slowly, gingerly through the muck and the mud. Where obviously there's been some kind of tsunami that's swept through and out.
I would have loved to see them on scooters. Like that would have been pretty hilarious.
Yeah, especially if they have like these big blue kind of like scooter helmets, like UN issued. Yeah. Those baby blue, robin egg blue helmets.
Big
That'd be pretty cool.
Off-road tires on these stupid scooters. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's cool. If you run out of juice, you can always pedal, I guess. Mm-hmm. The important things here is that Claire sees a ship blasting off, which gives her the idea that she'll inform later to like where you can go to find apparently a treasure trove of these suborbital capable ships. They take. What'd you think of the dueling pissers?
I was gonna say I thought you buried the lead here, but yeah, the pissing is so weird. Like there are trees around, Claire. You're not at least a little.
Yeah, you can lean up. My wife was just like, I don't know if that's the way to do, but I don't know. She's taking a power squat piss. The streams were invisible in the kind of low res review copies we get. I'm assuming there'll be dueling streams.
Oh yeah, I saw the dueling streams. Did you? Where was I watching it?
I saw a little bit of Amos's, but like the Claire's was just it's just a pixelated mess. So
yeah,
can't wait to see that in 4K, baby. Oh yeah,
that's what they made 4K for. Piss streams.
Exactly. She's remarkably better this episode. She says the blockers must have flushed her out of her system. Her senses are sharp again. She can taste, smell, focus. And she eats this protein bar with gusto, and she acts like a dog that's got peanut butter stuck to the roof of her mouth. And I swear to God, I was just waiting for her to accidentally trigger that stuff. Just clean it. That's a lot of protein there. Peanut butter chocolate. It's like so suddenly she goes into Super Saiyan mode and she's worthless for another 24 hours. But that didn't happen. Instead. Her increased senses picked up, I guess, the smell of decaying old people. And, here is the illustration of the churn. This is an old folks home who apparently lost power. Well, didn't apparently. Like, a lot of shit went bad. And they, I guess, abandoned their boat, or just didn't have time to do it. They just fled the building and tried to... keep these people as I don't know what you're supposed to make of this. This is some Walking Dead shit that you're running into here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're like, man, they're really slow playing the effects of the rocks. Like I thought a few episodes ago we were going to start to really see more about it. Like, okay, how bad off is Earth? I guess we haven't had much of a window into that. If we were going to have it, it'd come probably through Avasarala, but she's been so focused on, the quest for Marco here, that we just haven't seen much of her. I don't know at this point. Like why did these people die? I can't remember if they say specifically that the power was out, but obviously like they're going to be,
I just think that the power would have to be out if you're going to have like some kind of tsunami, rip through the eastern seaboard, that like you'd have massive loss of power. But of course, I don't know what the 24th century power generation and transmission capabilities are like. But
I saw a lot of solar panels up on the roofs of Baltimore buildings, so I imagine there are some buildings that still have power.
On the other hand, we also know that the sun's putting out roughly as much light as the moon. So that's probably not going to provide full power for sure.
Yeah. But they're really slow playing it. And then these deaths are kind of like the symptom, I guess, but not really like, what is the problem here? Is the power out? Is there like massive food store destruction? Is it just a breakdown of the governmental systems? And like so many of those people died that like their organization is off. What is it? I would like to know more about that, I think, before the end of the season. But we're only 2 episodes from the end. I'm not sure we're going to get a ton more by the
apparently
end.
On the Ty and Some Guy podcast, which is the thing that one of the book creators and showrunners plus Amos, Wes Chatham do. They mentioned that they are in universe being cagey about the damage. And I think that's wise. Like, you probably don't want to broadcast to the belt, and to the Mars, perhaps, that like we're really massively fucked here. We have a complete biosphere collapse, et cetera, et cetera. But it is frustrating because, like, we saw like kind of a nuclear winter situation. We saw these massive tidal waves that had to, like, all those people just milling around Baltimore have to be just dead. Like, they're talking about millions of dead, but like, you'd think hundreds of millions if the impacts are like what we saw, or like, because we just mentioned yesterday that Earth has a population of I guess Earth and Luna have a population of 24 billion people. Like, there's just the population density is fucking insane. Yeah, especially in these places that got hit. So like, I guess I'm just taking it for granted that Earth is permafucked, and we're going to slowly find out about it.
Well, I think not knowing is sort of undermining the scene with Eric and Amos later, where like they're trying to convince him that the world is fucked and there is nothing for him in Baltimore, because we haven't seen that, right? Like, we've seen a couple of dead people. We've seen a couple of forests devastated.
If the sun is blotted out and there's snow landing in like the summer, that's like those situations aren't going to clean. Those are not going to like just resolve like weather, like that's going to
the show has never said that, right? Like, I know that from like researching things, but I don't think that like in general people understand what a nuclear winter is, and what kind of effects that would have on the biosphere here in general.
That's fair if we're talking about general watching population. But I also know that like Dan and Ty do the research too. So it's if you want to, if you like, in fact, it would be a problem for me if like 4 of these asteroids hit and they're showing the things that they're showing, and then it turns out, oh, actually Earth is fine. I mean, I guess they could come up with some kind of like, oh, we've got some kind of chemical we can spray in the atmosphere that will collect heavier than air particles from the upper ozone and pull them down. And like, within a year we can get back to normal kind of thing, because it is in the future. And they do have the capacity to over 100 years terraform Mars. Well, Earth isn't as fucked up as Mars, so like maybe you can in a year or two get it back to normal, like terraform Earth to be back to Terra-like conditions. But yeah, I think they've gone too far of showing me that there is that kind of devastation to like walk it back. But I don't know, because the asteroids were pretty small too, and but yeah, so maybe it's more local, it's regional, blotting out of the sun, and not quite global. But yeah, we'll have to see. On board Marco's flagship, the Pella, we received confirmation that Sin is dead. That's one of the things, the open-ended questions we had last episode, and it was definitively shown that he is not. What do you think about this scene?
First of all, the Pella is just a really good-looking ship. We talk about the Rossi all the time, but
those Martians, man,
it looks like, I don't even know what to say. It looks like a lightsaber hilt. It's got this like industrial. It looks like a Blade Runner skyscraper, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. It's really cool looking.
Clean lines, symmetrical.
Yeah.
A little bit more finished. It's almost like the fusion of German engineering and Italian styling, kind of. Like they got Mars has got it all. They don't have to sacrifice fundamentals to get good looks. But yeah, I like the Martian aesthetic a lot,
for sure. I guess the clean lines that I'm not seeing here are the lines between Sin dying and Philip killing him that Marco tries to draw here. Like when he says, she didn't kill him, you did. I'm like, really? Is this, man, how manipulatable is Philip? Because I don't see the connection here. Like, okay, yes, he let Naomi live and she went out the airlock, but Sin let her live just as much. He killed himself. Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's the original sin is Philip taking his mom hostage so she wouldn't die on the Rocinante, and that's a true statement. Sure. And it's also not very helpful, but it is useful for Marco to continue to have control over his son, to continue that guilt shame engine, to make him redouble his efforts to prove himself to his father and to the people of the belt. So
I just want Philip to call bullshit on this whole thing
one time, and he will eventually, and it's going to be glorious. I think might get him killed, but it'll probably feel real good as an audience.
I mean, it felt great when Sin did it, so Philip doing it would probably feel double great.
Yeah, and this, like I said, this is the scene where like I was all geared up, like, you know, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. How are you going to get Naomi out of this situation? And I'm like, oh, they assume she's dead. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, of course they would. Right. Of course, she did like a 30-second long spacewalk, and this is kind of like, you know, like she threatened to do this before. Everyone knew it. It was the plot point from last episode. And why would they assume that she was able? Now, like, I do think, okay, and there's no, you know, it's not like the whole crew is at windows. The ship doesn't even have windows. I do wonder, like, really, no one tracked her body and saw that it, you know, they got this other ship wired for all this kind of tampering devices, which doesn't really make sense too in the context of this episode, but they don't have a, oh shit, someone opened the airlock sensor, you know, like the ship, the ship is slave to them, but they don't get all the information that it's providing. Like, I think you're supposed to not notice those things and just watch the episode and get consumed in how fucking diehard cool Naomi is doing all this MacGyver shit. But as I'm going to like lay out, like my first reaction is, wow, this is really cool. And I can't even believe I thought this would be a problem, because like this is a near miraculous escape attempt, and it just looks on the surface like she kills herself.
For sure. Yeah.
So that actually really worked out well, I think.
I think so too. And boy, that scene where they show her again, holy shit, she is fucked up.
Like I said, yeah, when she gets on board the chain smoker, Naomi, we find out she has definitely survived, but she's in very bad shape, and she surveys what she has to work with to escape her situation, which turns out to be not much.
Yeah, they do a great prosthetics and makeup job here. The swelling of the hands, the bursting of all the capillaries in her eyes and face, and you know, there's just like there's a moment where she just like wakes up and screams or something. Like it's a man. I can't imagine the trauma that your body goes through being in space. But this was another thing where I was like, oh, how are they gonna show this? Are they gonna really just make her look like a zombie? And yeah, they totally do.
Yeah, she's fucked up, and I did a little bit of research, and this is kind of consistent with what animal testing. They've thrown animals in vacuum chambers and watched them die to see what happened, and evidence based on real, like there's been multiple occasions where astronauts have lost partial pressure or complete pressure to segments of their spacesuits. Famously, like a Russian lost pressure containment in like from the elbow down, and like continued to spacewalk for like 15-20 minutes because it's fucking Russian. In fact, there's this one instance where an American astronaut apparently punctured their spacesuit with a sharp metal instrument and cut themselves, and they were exposed to vacuum for some time, and eventually the coagulated blood getting sucked out of the suit like froze and sealed over the patch, aka the Mark Watney maneuver. And there's also, like, I think the thing is, like, people are like, well, why is she screaming in pain? Because she's suffering from the bends. Like, you think of the bends as usually divers going under very high pressure situations and returning to one Earth's atmosphere. It's the pressure differential that causes it. There's things called shallow water bends where people who have like scuba dived in like 10 foot of water for a couple of hours and then take an airplane trip the same day, just the pressure differential between 10 feet under the water and being, 30,000 foot in the sky triggers the bend. So she's actually feeling all these dissolved gases coming out of her joints, and it feels like it's described as feeling like acute arthritis in all of your joints. So like that's why she's so racked with pain in the beginning of this episode. She's still kind of returning to the pressure. I think they've exaggerated some of these effects. I don't know that you would feel the bends that significantly, especially as soon, being out in space for 30 seconds and then repressurize. I don't know that you would feel it that significantly post repressurization, but it seems like it's all consistent with like the worst of what can happen to you when you're exposed to vacuum.
And that's what the stuff later where she's trying to lever this grate off the floor and she's screaming while she's doing it. That's what that's all about too.
Yeah, for sure. And she looks around and she's not happy with what she sees, because she sees smashed panels and disabled control panels and these weird red squares wired up all over the place, which we're going to find out are anti-tampering systems. And then overall, she hears a voice.
Is that
she tracks down?
Wait, anti-tamper? I thought they were bombs. I thought they were literally just like
She said that like
explosives.
all the consoles have been disabled or wired with anti-tampering devices. So I assume
that.
there's combinations of like the anti-tampering is wired to the thing and also a proximity.
But why would they wire up anti-tampering devices if she's not going to be on the ship?
Thank you. That is what doesn't make any fucking sense. Why is there all this precautions taken to keep someone from jacking the ship? Why have they taken the effort to strip this ship down to where no one inside can do anything about it when they didn't expect anyone? That's why I'm saying that, like, on second thought, this seems very, very engineered. This seems very, very written to be a Naomi escape box instead of just being.
Well, okay, so what if the plan here, and I'm just speculating because let's pretend I don't know anything. What if the plan here is to get Holden on board the ship? Because, like, he thinks Naomi is on the ship, right? So Rossi docks, Holden goes on the ship, and then they blow it.
But it says it's wired to a proximity. I mean, Naomi says it's also it's wired to proximity thing. So, like, as soon as a ship gets close enough, it'll blow up.
One or the other of those things, not both of them.
Right. But, like, and if just like, but I don't even understand why you would take the time to disable the controls of the ship. Like, it seems like, again, it's like, well, you never know, someone might get on here and do something, so better smash all these panels and take off all the steering wheels and then wire everything to it's like, it really doesn't make much sense. If what they're wanting to do is lure Holden in here and blow it up. But I didn't notice that the first time I watched it. And if I wasn't taking notes and actually like, wait a second, what did she just say? Did she just say anti-tampering devices? The fuck?
Yeah,
like,
I missed that.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't think this does torpedoes. And as I said last episode, and I think the feedback section, I'm willing to let a good show do some plot holes in the service of getting back on the plot. Like, I don't let many slip, but almost every great show I've ever seen has an occasional, the writer's like, well, shit, we're over here, we need to get over there, fuck it, let's just engage 4-wheel drive and drive through the muck like Amos and Claire on their e-bikes. Maybe this is it, but I don't know. I felt like if they didn't do all that anti-tampering and all that thing, Naomi just gets in there and she's done. Like, also, like, the fact that they'd stripped this ship clean to the point that there's not even like a ration thing. Like, they went through this strange ship and pulled literally every tool and toolbox and quick repair kit and like, the only thing they left is like a little sonic driver that fell into the floor panels. Like, I don't know. Kind of strained my suspension of disbelief. Not fatally, but a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any problem with them stripping down the ship. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess they are belters. They don't want to waste anything.
Yeah, they've got Drummer out on supply runs, scavenging shit. Of course, they're not going to blow up a bunch of supplies, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of like what the effort would be to like go through your average, I don't know, 100-foot long freighter in an earth vessel and like get every last wrench and screwdriver off of it. Like,
it's not,
it would be
insignificant.
It'd be an amazing amount of effort, and this has got to be even more complicated with the different pressure holes and nooks and crannies and access panels and conduits. So anyway,
yeah. Are they broadcasting this distress signal from one of her suits, one of the Chetsmoka suits? Or
it seems like it, yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if she was receiving the signal on that suit or if they were broadcasting from that suit, but it seems like they are, which I thought was a nice little touch. It's like,
yeah,
the communications. The communication is coming from one of Naomi's suits. Maybe you would think, oh, that must be Naomi. We've seen this happen before where they can fake a signal from somebody. James Holden was faked in video way back when. So they can definitely do this.
To the point, it almost feels like a 21st century sop to have a character be like, how can it not be her? It's her voice. And someone has to explain, we can fake that shit. We can actually we can deep fake that shit right now at this resolution, at like a bad AM radio quality. Get out of here. That's
Give me your iPad.
Right now.
I can do that in 45 seconds. Photoshop is still around, and now it does like audio too.
Yeah, it's like if someone like uses a calculator to do, I don't know, 8 significant digits worth of math. How could you possibly get that answer so fast? Like, I use this calculator. Like, come on. But anyway, that's what happens, and that's a situation.
It's an app that was coded by Mao Industries. It's just like, we've got those things today, right? We got the deep fake apps where you can change your face
That's what
out
I'm saying.
for 100 plus years from now. We're gonna have all kinds of technology like that.
Oh yeah, buckle up. The next 10 years is going to be real fucking fun with the deep fake shit on top of the fake news baloney. Like it's going to be very hard for people, even well-meaning people, to figure out what the fuck is true and false.
If you don't know about it,
fun.
Yeah, search up deep fakes. Search up safe for work deep fakes, because there's a lot of not safe for work ones. But yeah, check that out, because it's frightening.
Back on board the Rocinante, Bull, Monica, and Holden debate essentially all the things we wondered about last episode. Can the protomolecule survive a reactor breach, or whether the Zemaya could have handed off the protomolecule before its untimely demise? Jim, what were the results of this debate?
The results are we always need to give this show one more episode before we start questioning it, because you're right. Everything we were questioning, they go on to at least speculate on, if not outright address.
And these people are kind of in the position to know, like,
sure.
Like Holden, like, you know, could it survive a reactor? And Holden says, like, this is kind of essentially how we've killed it every other time, like, you know, with raw nuclear fusion. Mm-hmm. And then, like, could they have handed it off? And Bull's right there. Hey, we're on the scopes monitoring everything. You know, we only received the one transmission right before it blew up. And that was probably, you know, Marco doing his best Bane impersonation. The flames continued to rise, brother.
Yeah.
You got to kill yourself. So
you're right. They would probably know. So, well, let's assume, like they are, that the protomolecule is gone. Well, now you've got the question of, is Holden going to drag these people into a suicide mission? And I love the looks between Monica and Bull here. Things just got worse for Monica and Bull now that the protomolecule's gone, right?
Yeah. And I don't know what they do, because, like, it's Holden's ship, but damn, how do they expect everyone to go all in to save one person? Yeah,
this is not the crew of the Rossi who is, depends on Naomi for their lives. Yeah, it's just random people from Tycho. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
And it's one thing to go on a volunteer mission to potentially save the entirety of humanity from another protomolecule disaster, but to do it for a person, it's tough, and I don't know how they're going to resolve that either. So we then go to Drummer's little flotilla, and her faction is struggling with dealing with the changes under the new Marco regime.
Yeah, they're scavengers now for Marco, and it's not just that they're scavengers, right? It's that it's apparent that Marco is destroying these ships and then sending them to pick the bones. I can't remember if it's this scene or a later scene where they discuss that, say basically just that. My question is, how long will the crew tolerate this? How long can Drummer tolerate it? How long before somebody here rebels? What do they do if that happens? Being this like familial unit here, it's going to be tough if somebody doesn't want to go along with this plan. And I guess it depends on who it is as to how they address that, because if it's Drummer, I think they're just going to go do whatever she wants to do. Mm-hmm. If it's nameless husband A, who knows? I don't know. Does Drummer space the guy? Does he just sit in his room and sulk the whole time because they're doing things he doesn't want to do? I really don't know. I'm curious to see how they handle it.
And the other complication is you got Karal nakedly sizing up the captain's chair for her own posterior. You know, like, oh yeah, this is the Drummer's broken this in nice for me. Like, she's wanting to use any excuse to wait for her to buck an order and then assume control. That's literally what she's there for. She's almost like a political officer at this point. Mm-hmm. But they also kind of like, I also wonder like how Drummer can maintain loyalty to her crew, because like if you take Karal at her face value, Marco is only acting in defense. Like, it's not that he's proactively exterminating all Belters who opposed him, because that's what Drummer supposes. She recognized this faction as one of the ones that voted to throw him at the airlock last season. But, Marco let those guys go. They attacked 2 of his skiffs leaving Ceres Station. So he's defending the people that are loyal to him. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be true for enough of Drummer's crew to believe it, to be like, well, fuck, if they rejected a deal and then, was the aggressor, then fuck them. Because otherwise it's just senseless belter on belter violence or punitive belter on belter violence. So I don't know, but it's sad to watch this tight knit crew start to come apart at the seams over this new mission of theirs. The new UN Secretary General Pasteur gets his first test in leadership as he addresses all the peoples of Earth and Luna about the asteroid attack from some kind of, I think, moon-based rotunda. What do you think of his performance here, Jim?
I don't feel bad anymore about not knowing how to pronounce Versarala, because everybody in this show pronounces it differently. Versala, I think, was at one point said. The cadence with which you say her name is dependent on just what actor strolls in, what extra strolls in off the set that day, right? Oh, we're going to give you a line. It's got this name in it, but we're not going to tell you how to say it. What is going on here? Because everybody in this room says it different, and
it is weird also that I buy that when she was the power behind the throne, but she was the Secretary General. Like, it'd be kind of like, maybe you struggle with Barack Obama, I guess, although that's kind of like,
there was a time
after he's been
when
president for a couple of years, everyone kind of finds its way of rolling off the tongue.
It's not Barack anymore. You learn how to say it, right? Like it's when, before I knew who Kamala Harris was, I said Kamala Harris because
right.
That's what it looked like to me. But it only took a matter of hearing it a couple of times before I was on board with actually saying her name right. So Jesus Christ, people.
Aversala. But this, I thought this speech was pretty good. Like, at first I thought like, oh, this is a little unrealistic. This guy coming across so polished and whatnot. But he is a politician, and clearly when he walks off the stage after, he essentially says, hey, he starts off relatable. No, I didn't expect to be thrust in this situation. But then he goes, but I do have, because of it, a clarity of vision, and what I lack for in experience, I'm going to make up for in passion, dedication, and support, as he gestures all around them, particularly picks out Admiral Delgado and Avasarala, Avasarala is a recent hero of saving the system. That's one of the reasons she became Secretary General in the first place, and she's recently linchpin saving Earth from that. So he's kind of leaning on these people and, promising not to stop until they bring Marco's people to justice for their atrocities. It reminded me a lot of the George W. Bush speech on the rubble of the World Trade Center right after 9/11. The whole, they're going to hear from all of us real soon. Which is effective. I'm sure that all 24 billion people of Terra and Luna are out for blood. Immediately after 9/11, low 90% of the American people were completely on board with putting the United States boot up someone's ass. That's just an attack of this scale and magnitude. It's going to be, people are going to want blood. I don't care how advanced they are in the 24th century. They're going to want it. So, but him walking off and kind of instantly reverting back to that kind of well, I read the speech you gave me, guys.
But he reads it so well. Is this a story of a man who's corrupted by the power that is thrust upon him, or is this a story of a man who wields that power extremely effectively while still also remaining a decent person? I don't know, because this guy, as best I know, is not in the books. So
I hope it's the latter, because I actually feel like they're doing a good job of showing a guy, because this guy isn't just some schlub. He's highly educated. He's an engineer. I believe that he can read a speech well. And he also continues to do what I think is good governance. He's getting multiple opinions. He's not taking hasty action. He's considering, I think. And when you say act effectively, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything he does has to work or be the best thing. It's just, reasonable people can disagree, but he's not just going full Phantom of the Opera, or he's not going to like just crawl into a corner and suck his thumb and let others bully him around. I continue to really like this guy is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, me too.
So Amos and Peaches arrive in Balmer. They finally make their way to Baltimore, and they make a deal with Amos's quote unquote brother Eric. Talk about this a bit.
I don't know what the upside here is for Eric. Like, okay, part of this is a symptom of they haven't really laid out how fucked Earth is. The other part is a guy like Eric, let's say he gets off the planet. Let's say he goes to Luna. Where does he fit in on Luna? Because there are millions? No, millions is low. Billions of people who are going to be trying to get off of Earth and head to Luna. At least temporarily. You're going to have such a glut of people up there that it's not going to be like, oh, well, we need you to go, work on water recyclers or whatever. And even if he could, is that the type of guy Eric is? What skills does Eric bring to the table that would be effective once he's off the planet? And I just don't see it. Like, I don't see this place where he ends up that both he feels good about being at, but also everybody feels good about having him at.
I feel like the best analogy here is that, like, right now he's, like the quote Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, he's trying to climb the ladder of chaos. Amos is saying that he's climbing a ladder that's leading to a floor that's on fire. Mm-hmm. If he climbs a ladder that goes a little bit higher to Luna, that is no longer on fire. And the sooner he gets it up the ladder and can set up space like a criminal on the moon where everyone's trying to come in and get papers to work and get supplies and stuff. Like the criminal element does very well in those situations. Like gray market, black market stuff work very well in times of crisis like this. So if he can be the first of the new boots on the ground, like right now, Luna's probably divvied up in its criminal organizations just like Earth is.
Well, that's the problem, right? Like
there's new influx of people. There are people who are not claimed yet, and he can get in there and kind of like maybe take over some of the complacent I just think that like the argument is again like the ladder of chaos in Baltimore is just if Earth is permafucked, you're climbing a ladder that's just going to go back down into a hole. Whereas if you get off the Earth, in Luna, you got a chance to do something. And coming to grips with the fact that like you're no longer the boss of this city because this city doesn't exist anymore is the deal. I think that's what this whole speech about you're a dead woman is. But
yeah, I'm not sure I buy it. Like I don't think literally every person on Earth is going to die. And if that's the case, then Eric's actually in a pretty good position there in Baltimore. You can see his operation rolling into effect immediately, right? They're stockpiling supplies in the skyscraper that they own, this apartment building or whatever. He's got an infrastructure here that allows him to accomplish a ton of shit. On the moon, he's just going to be another dude, and that infrastructure already exists, and it's in the hands of everyone else. So, like, the people coming in on the relief boats are going to be gobbled up, I think, by the existing underground power structure there. But I guess if Eric thinks he can make a go of it, then. Or at least if he thinks it'll be easier on the moon than it is here. I don't know.
I think it's entirely possible that like nearly everyone on Earth will die because they don't have the heavy lift capacity to move billions. They just don't. They don't have enough capacity to move billions of people off this planet. And if Earth's biosphere collapses, we barely have enough food to feed 7 billion people right now. Feeding 25 billion people. When the biosphere over large parts of the the world has collapsed, the water's been polluted. I'm assuming
you don't have
a lot
to feed 25 billion, right? Like a lot of people are going to die. Tons of people are going to die. All those people who are on UBI living in tent cities in New York are A, probably already dead, but B, if they're not, they're going to die because they don't have this kind of support. But feeding 1 billion, I believe you could do that with the tech they've got. Certainly. So
you think that like Eric, I guess that's what Eric needs to ask himself. Does he think that he can survive the churn where only 1 out of 25 people are going to survive, or can he be? Because again, like let's say how many people can flee to Luna in the next week? 10,000, maybe. Can you survive a
depends on how many
churn of
ships they got.
10,000, like, 10 to 100,000 arriving on a moon that has 1 billion or 2 people on it versus like being the 1 out of 25 that survives?
I mean, this could
especially
also
if you're a criminal and you've stockpiled all this food and weapons and like the legitimate, like whatever vestige of the government wants that to feed people, like, are you going to be able to hold out against all that? Like, I don't know. I said the math makes sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to you, then it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, the Luna's going to have a problem too. You can't have this kind of influx of people and not have the systems there stressed, right? The moon is a much harsher environment, probably even than the Earth is, with a bunch of rocks hitting it. So like, you send a bunch of people to the moon, it doesn't really solve any problems. It just makes things on the moon worse.
Yeah, I agree. I just think when you say this influx, I just think that influx is going to be relatively smaller compared to...
Really? Because I see them as like, okay, maybe the suborbital ships aren't as like as numerous as cars or something are right now, but they're certainly as numerous as like buses, right? Like I would think between commerce and just personal crafts and I mean, the rich have like spaceships parked in docks like boats, right? So
that's true. But I guess an interesting question is like, how many people could you, with the combined commercial airlift capacity of the United States, like airlift to Europe, like in a month? Like, I don't know. I imagine someone could do the math on that, but like,
it's millions and millions.
You think so? I imagine that like whatever that capacity is, you'd have some fraction of that to move everyone from the Earth to the moon. But I could be wrong. The other thing is like I was skeptical of like the spacecraft and garages on these islands, if they're going to like survive the tsunami, because it seems like they'd be kind of delicate and maybe they wouldn't be able to survive being submerged underwater for some time. I
mean, clearly the thing they want you to know is that it's less shit's going to be better on the moon. That's what they're saying in this scene.
They mentioned this Anisaki Island in New Hampshire. I looked it up and there is no Anisaki Island, but then I'm like, well, I wonder if Anisaki Island is some, and it might not, I phonetically spelled it as best as I could. I don't know if that's actually what she said. I don't have captions for the screeners, but I wonder if it's an artificial island, because probably most of the natural islands in New Hampshire are like underwater, and there's probably new islands, and they might have man-made a few, but like, yeah, I looked that up and there isn't an island that exists, which again didn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So then, the other really funny thing is the callback to the tequila, because you saw Amos like looking at those bottles and like wanting to snatch one. He's like, it's going to be a long trip. I saw that whole case of tequila. Maybe we should take that.
Yeah. Somehow I think that's going to find its way to the Rossi.
Oh, yeah. It'd be a nice season finale, kind of him sipping that in his quarters.
Yeah, if they ever get back.
So the UN Secretary General gets briefed on the latest on the manhunt for Marco and Eris. This is where someone just butchers Avasarala's name. And I like this scene because it gives us a lot of stuff that we would otherwise not know about. Like, for example, is the ring gate safe? Admiral Delgado thinks it is. What's the threat of Medina Station to the fleet? Negligible. The real question is, how do we hit back on Marcos? What did you think of their plans here?
Yeah, man, I thought I was on board with Delgado until he comes out with this shit, and I think he's wrong here. I think for lack of a better term, the optics are real fucking bad if they go through with Delgado's plan. You're going to start lashing out at innocent civilians. And I get it. It's a sticky situation. He is using human shields, right? I don't know what you do about it, but I don't think you do what Delgado is suggesting.
It's because I was debating here in my mind. Like, I think that, like, you're right. Delgado's approach is playing right into Marco's hands, is exactly what he wants you to do. And anytime you do something that the enemy wants you to do, it's probably not in your best interest to do it. On the other hand, it's hard to think of a disproportionate response when the attack killed millions and millions of innocent people and perhaps destroyed Mother Earth. And you're talking about nuking a space station that has people chanting the name of this mass murderer and obviously outing the support. It's his home base, like, and there's like a total of like 9,000 people on it, or maybe it's like 4,500. Like, it's hard to say that that's disproportionate, which is probably one of the reasons that Marcos hopes that because like he knows like all that logic tracks, and I hope you fuckers take the bait, because then I will unite the belt. Now it's in theory I've united the belt, but once you start attacking civilian populations and you remove the objections of the more reasonable belters that we saw were arguing about this last episode, then you got what you want. I
think it's nice that we've seen those arguments, because you can imagine once the shooting starts, all those options that Drummer and her crew are considering about, like, do we take Marco's offer, or do we, go off and try and just make our own way in like inner space? And you could see a belter sort of like looking at the attack on Palace Station that Delgado's suggesting and saying, well, there are no options now. Even if we weren't inclined to side with Marco before this, it's not that now suddenly Marco seems more sympathetic necessarily, which I think he would. No, but yeah, they can't go to the inners because the inners are murdering them.
Right.
This is a sticky situation, and I think they're about to just fall into the quicksand here unless this guy is level-headed enough to keep them out of it. And the other thing that this scene does is it takes away an ally that I think Avasarala thought she had in Delgado, right? They were both on the same page about, the rocks, and trying to, he apologized for not fighting harder for her a couple episodes ago.
And that's the key. He's got that guilt. Like, oh God, I was a little soft, or I was a little too concerned to cover my ass. Now he's overcorrecting.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, man. I hope this pastor guy is better than the previous rulers here.
But it's funny because like if you could like transmit the argument that Drummer's people had about joining Marco to Earth, and you could transmit to the belt the argument that the UN is having about this, because it's like very fifth, like that board was not, that this cabinet was not united in fuck the belters. It was like a bunch of people like, we can't do this. These are innocent people. We'd be no better than he is. Well, they don't even wear uniforms, so they're all, that this isn't a legitimate military. All those arguments back and forth show that it's everything that Delgado and Marcos is trying to tell people, which is, it's us against them, it's all of them against all of us, is never the truth.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what this Secretary General Pastor, I don't know how stern of stuff he's made out of. Because also the pressure, like I said, the pressure to do something is going to be massive, and it's going to be the other thing is, a guy in this weak a position, even if he wants to do the right thing, he's got to always think, I'm in a precarious position. I'm like 32nd in line for the throne. If I appear weak and ineffective, there'll be a million reasons to replace me and more qualified people, and God knows what they'll do. So sometimes that can be an interesting piece of the psychological Jenga pile too.
Yeah, I find it ironic that the former Secretary General is sitting in this room and she somehow doesn't have the mic here, right? Like she does. She's got his ear, but he's the guy calling the shots, even though he was some fucking teacher on a field trip with sixth graders an episode ago.
Secretary for Transportation.
And she was the fucking Secretary General. It's just she got busted down by Gao.
And I guess that's the thing, is like, this is still the remnants of Gao's regime, sure. And that regime was hostile to Avasarala. So it's kind of amazing she has a seat at the table. So back on board the Chainsmoker, Naomi scavenges for food, water, equipment, trying desperately to think of anything that'll change her survival situation, while also protecting the Good Samaritans from blowing themselves the fuck up, coming to rescue her.
Which part of this is this? Because like this is interspersed throughout the episode.
This is the one she pries up the floor panel.
She's trying to send her own message? Okay. She's not sending her own message yet.
Here's the second of the problems I have with... There's no fucking way this floor panel is held on by gravity. And they've established that she has no fucking tools to work with. So every time these ships have a sudden stop, the floor panels just go flying. These extremely heavy floor panels just come and pulp everybody to death. Is that what they're saying? What? Like, I'm honestly,
I don't know.
Yeah, the magnets are no. Yeah. Anytime you lose power and gravity, you want all your fucking heavy floor grates to fly around willy nilly. Like,
yeah, it's a good point.
This is another one where the showrunner's just hoping you don't notice, because this makes no fucking sense in context of the universe. No sense at all.
Yeah, they could have at least shown like some internal, maybe under the grate latches or something that she's disconnecting.
Use some kind of improvised tool to get to a real tool. Like I kind of remember, it's like we said last episode, there was a couple of ways that, like a couple of insert shots to show how she got out of her brig, plausibly. And I feel like there were ways you could answer that. It's just that I don't know. Like it's like either they weren't aware of the problem, or for some reason they didn't have the time or money to get the shots necessary to fully sell it. And as it is, it's just one of those rough stretches of broken ground that you got to figure out. Now, having all those objections, it's pretty effective, like her having to kind of improvise a pulley system and lift this thing up so she can get this like crude tool that she can then go and do bigger and better things on. That stuff. So seeing her MacGyver the ship is really cool. It's just that, like, the premise of the scene doesn't make any fucking sense in the universe.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, and we see the early stages of her plan that she's got this helmet that we know has a weak transmitter. Presumably, she's trying to wire that into something that can get a little bit more juice, or try to hijack a signal that's being sent out. She can send her own signal out. And she realizes at some point she's going to have to go in between the inner and outer hull where there's no oxygen, and she's able to put on her pressure suit and use the vestiges of oxygen in that to make very brief trips in there to strip out wire and enough to make a crude microphone so she can record her own a message that for some reason she doesn't get out. I don't know. Like this scene fizzles and I'm not exactly sure why. Like it's
yeah. I feel like she's trying to use either a low power transmitter that would just be like overridden by the higher power transmitter that the ship's using. Like she's trying to use her suit to send a message, but I thought her suit was transmitting to the computer on the ship, which is then transmitting out. I'm not real sure exactly how that worked, but
that's the other thing I have. Like they have all these like tamper sensors on everything except for the thing that's sending the distress signal. I guess that's the third thing that bothers me about this this engineered situation. But well, whatever. She's got this. She explains the situation to this message that doesn't actually go out to anybody, but it serves to kind of let us know if you were struggling to understand what was going on, that the chain smoker's been converted into a bomb. It's got tamper sensors. It's got a proximity detonator. She's got this improvised radio that she can't transmit. She can only receive. That's
but we don't really know that in the moment, right? She's like sending out this desperate message hoping that someone will pick it up, and they let that play out for a while, and I think they did some really cool dramatic stuff with it, which we'll get to here in a second.
So then we go to Drummer's faction and we see them enjoying a lighthearted moment in between their stress squabbling and their emotional breakdowns.
That shot must have looked really silly without the CG. Like you just got a bunch of just like people sucking into the air. It was hilarious when they Lady and Tramp the water out of the air too.
I had the same notes. They Lady and Tramp the water boat. I mean, like if you've seen an astronaut reel of like hijinks, this is one of the highlights. Someone squeezing some tang out of a pouch and hoovering it up and looking amazing. Gravity's not real, kids.
Never gets old.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's enough. Like this kind of like probably every Belter kid does this at some point. That their rediscovery of that breaks the tension just enough, but it's almost like leaves them sadder when they briefly recapture their family feeling, and then reality comes rushing back. The
water sucking doesn't get old, but what does get old is this argument that someone else, if they didn't do the terrible thing for the terrible person, someone else would do it instead. This is complete bullshit. Anytime you hear somebody say this, call them on their bullshit, because this is a self-perpetuating ideology. If
it's only true if everyone does it, right?
Right. Because if everyone were to reject that philosophy, it would no longer be true.
Right.
So it is an excuse. It's a rationalization that people use to allow themselves to do things they know they shouldn't do. They know are wrong and evil. So yeah, bullshit. I call bullshit.
On the other
whole
hand,
thing.
it's an understandable thing because it's very effective. Like, you know, Pablo Escobar, if you watch Narcos, his philosophy was you can take my lead or silver. Most people in one-to-one transactions, if everyone takes the lead instead of silver, then Pablo's plan immediately comes to a halt and he's defeated. But it's a rational decision to not want to die right here, right now, on the hopes that if everyone makes their superhuman sacrifice, that you'll defeat the evil. What Jim's saying is absolutely right, and that's how evil's defeated. But holy fuck, when it's your turn in the firing box, I hope you got. I hope you're made of that stern stuff.
And that's only true. The lead only applies because someone made the decision not to say that in the first place, right? If Pablo had come to the first guy he was trying to recruit and said, "I give you lead or silver," and the guy said, "No, I'm not taking any of them."
Mm-hmm. I mean, he dies.
Maybe he dies, but how many times does Pablo nobody fucking Escobar go up to somebody and say lead or silver and shoot them in the head before the authorities come in and just arrest his singular ass with no support? Like, Pablo Escobar does not become Pablo Escobar unless a lot of people step in and just rationalize it away by, someone else will do it if I don't.
But the person with the gun through their skull who is right here, right now, going to experience that consequence, like, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like and it is. It's one of those things where it's an iterative game, you know, but it also, to that person, it's the one and only game they're going to play or potentially could be. So
yeah, you're also playing that game for everybody in the future who's gonna. That's
why it's like they get away that in the short term, but in the long term, people get wise to it, and then, you know, it's a paradox. Like, you end a lot of human suffering if you didn't do that, but on the other hand, you almost need a lot of human suffering to, like, get people's backbone stiffened to make those kind of sacrifices.
The good thing is it takes a few people rejecting that philosophy in the right places of power to actually put an end to those forces, like the Pablo Escobars of the world.
And it's weird because, like, the more people that take the silver, the more courageous decision to take the lead becomes, you know, like, because you know, like, it's one thing when, as you say, it's just a street tough, but when you're entrenched, you know, it becomes, but usually there are those heroes. So we'll see who they are in the show. Meanwhile, on board the Screaming Firehawk, Bobby and Alex pick up a tricksy and false Naomi distress signal and unwittingly pass that information on to Holden on the Rossi.
I love how they play this. This is what I'm talking about, where they let the question of whether or not she can get this transmission out linger to great dramatic effect, because you think that Bobby has intercepted her, you know, her distress signal that she sent, right? Not the fake one. And you're like, oh yes, okay, they picked it up. They're going to go save her.
They're close enough, yeah.
And then when it comes through to Holden and it's the wrong message, it's the one that's saying, help, I'm in distress, come save me. Oh my God, it's such a good moment.
It's incredible. Like I said, I'm willing to forgive some of these other things because the base level of cleverness of what Naomi really does is high. And it's I can't remember if I talked about this in the intro, but like a lot of this episode I was frustrated because I didn't know what she was trying to do. But by the time it all came together, like, it felt so satisfying when you hear that repeated signal over the credits. And the way they play with your emotions. You think that, like, oh, because of the sequence of events, Naomi got it just in time, everything, but oh no. And then again, another one of these things where they play with what information people know, what people don't know, what people know they don't know, and it's really effective in building the tension. And
the tragedy of it too is amplified because, like, Holden has put Alex and Bobby in a situation to relay a false message to him. Like, you're not even sure Holden would have got this message and been on his way. Well, no, I guess he's on his way to the Chetmoka after the protomolecules destroyed. So maybe that doesn't apply, but yeah, they did everything really well here.
Also, they name check Los Compadres. We're going to be able to get out our holographic cowboy hats again on the live stream, Jim.
Right.
So they talk about Hygeia, which I every time I like looking these up to get the geography. Hygeia is the 4th largest asteroid in the solar system. It's just under 400 kilometers wide. Apparently they have a Los Compadres, which is the ridiculous Martian Texan franchise that Bobby and Alex first visited this season, and Bobby's like wrinkling her nose like, I can't believe you can stand that place, and then him muttering under his breath, everyone needs compadres. Yeah. I thought it was so fucking funny.
Because you can imagine that being their advertising slogan.
It
right?
absolutely is. It's like, it's the no rules, just right. Everyone needs compadres. Come see your compadres down at, no, it's totally the commercial. It's totally the jingle.
Oh, man.
I fucking love it. And it makes also, it's like one of those things where like Alex is a bit more of a clown. I think he's always been kind of the clown of the crew, but he's a bit more of a clown, and it's kind of takes the sting out of the character going away, honestly. Like, it feels like almost like they wrote to make Alex kind of the butt of all the jokes. He's the douchebag that likes that fucking likes getting on the mechanical bull and getting thrown off and etc. So
what's a low G mechanical bull riding sim look like? Know. Like you get thrown off and you go 40 feet into a wall.
Right. Yeah. Or it's probably a lot easier to stay on it, right? You know, they must have to buck 3 times harder to compensate for the reduced Martian gravity. Yeah. Spin 3 times faster. Back on Luna, the UN Secretary General Pasteur calls in Admiral Delgado to his office to speak frankly about his measured response to Marco's atrocities.
Okay, this is the scene I thought we already had. Where he then asks, Delgado about, you think this is the right decision? And Delgado's got some fire in him, some anger. Yeah. Clearly, it's not all just like, I think from a military perspective, this is the right call. No, it's from a personal perspective.
Yeah. And he lays out the strategy of like, look, there's no way this can be a disproportionate response when we're talking about just stacks of civilians. He's hiding behind human shields. There's not going to be blood on your hands. And then, Pasteur quite reasonably saying, I have a feeling at the end of all of this, we're all going to have blood on their hands. And Delgado's chilling response, well, if it's their blood, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I said, these are understandably human impulses, but they're also probably playing right into the enemy's hands. And it's going to be a longer, harder war to fight an insurgency, especially a well-armed one like this one. But it's probably the quicker, in the long run, it's the quicker, more sure way towards getting back to the peaceful, stable equilibrium you want. And maybe a way to if you do resist, to the extent that Earth and Martians resist disproportionate responses, it gives the Belters that are horrified by this and saying this isn't us, it gives them strength and makes the aggressors in the Belt, the bloodthirsty ones that people chant, makes them weak. To the extent that Earth leans in and brutalizes more Belters, it weakens the people crying out for peace and saying this isn't us, and it strengthens the Marcos sycophants. It's just, you can argue whether it's moral or whatever all you want. I'm just saying that's the literal calculus on the ground. And
as a military strategist, he's got to know that, right? I think his judgment is a little bit clouded.
It feels like every time I've seen military debate, thank God we have civilian control of the military, because if we didn't, you would always just be like, yeah, fuck it. We got these nukes. Let's nuke them. We got these troops. Let's rub them down their throat. We got these bullets.
The military hammer hitting obviously military nail.
All the nails look very military when all you've got is a military hammer. So, meanwhile, on board the Chainsmoker, Naomi listens in horror as Alex gallantly informs her that they're burning hard. And when they're on board the Screaming Eagle, that means something. That means they're going to get faster than probably any other ship in the system. So that causes her to redouble her efforts to do something. And eventually she has a breakthrough that on the first watch, I was like, well, the music's telling me and she's crying in relief. So she did something, but fuck if I know what it was. You want to walk us through this, Jim?
Yeah. So as best I understand it, what she's doing here is cutting out certain parts of the message. And that's like, she, at first, when you hear her like repeating the message to herself, she's memorizing it and the pace, the tempo of it, right? So when she's back in between the holes, she can kind of get a feel for the rhythm. And what she's doing is she's cutting out the transmission strategically to make the transmission say something else. And in this case, what it says is, "This is Naomi Nagata, tells James Holden I'm in control." There's a big long pause, but this is exactly how it goes down in the book. Same message, same method, all that. And so I was not confused at all by this. I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing here. Like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know how they would film this because it's very complicated what she's doing. It seems like you were able to pick up on pretty much everything she's doing though. So
yeah, by the time the credits roll, I understood everything and I thought it was brilliant. And I thought the way they told the story, where it's like, it's very Groundhog's Day. It's someone doing, I guess that what she's essentially doing is going to every internal circuit breaker in this, the ship that's probably numbered in some way. And she's keeping track of which one she's tried so she doesn't get confused. And eventually she'll find the one that is cutting the communications. Now, I do have another problem with the whole tamper sensors. Like, it does seem like if you're just randomly flipping breakers on and off in a ship, that you would probably flip the tamper sensors. I don't know. But like, if I just take it at face value, it's a very clever plan that she succeeded at. And they told it very, you felt her fear and exhaustion and the fact that she has to do this laborious system where like she goes in there and she has a limited supply of oxygen before the carbon dioxide builds up and kills her, and every time she comes out gasping, and it's just shorthand of her chiseling the numbers into the side of the hull. This shows like the amount of effort in a very efficient and cinematic way,
and it's well super done. Hot
they did
in
this
there.
I imagine, sure.
Like she's sweating up a storm in that suit. And when they do a lot of subtle things, a lot of overt things too, like where they've got a literal sensor like Miller with the bomb, back on Eros or whatever,
right?
Where it's beeping at him. It's beeping at Naomi here, telling her CO2 high. But they do some subtle stuff too, where she walks back in, she takes off her helmet. But not only does she do that, I thought the first time she kind of opened her suit, she was stripping down, getting out of the suit because maybe it was hot or something. And I'm like, man, that seems inefficient. I eventually realized what she's doing is she's letting the CO2 out of her suit, right? And refilling it with breathable air.
Refilling her oxygen tank, which is her suit.
Exactly, yeah. So a lot of really cool, subtle touches there that I liked.
Agreed. So then, like I said, I kind of streamlined this because this cuts back and forth between this next scene we're going to talk about, which is Drummer's fleet. They receive Naomi's distress signal, but Drummer's ordered not to respond as Karal tells them that Naomi spaced herself on Marco's ship. Is it Karal? I said Karal.
I think Karal is hilarious, but yeah, it is Karal.
Karal tells her that Naomi spaced herself aboard Marco's flagship. However, Karal is shocked to find that the message apparently is changing, which shouldn't be possible if no one is on board the ship and Naomi is dead.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of this speech here, but what I couldn't help but notice in this scene is the lighting. It's so good. It's got this like deep texture to it. It's like dark, but there are so many colors in it. It's like oranges and greens and blues. You can see like stuff that's clearly meant to be illumination in the oranges and the lanterns and stuff. But then you also get like the screens, right? Adding the blues and the greens, and just like this show is beautiful. It's got an understated beauty to it, but man, the person who lit this scene, genius.
It's also, and I know they've talked about this in some of the making ofs, that they deliberately do the lighting so that at a glance you can tell what ship you're on. Like the lighting scheme of the Razorback is completely different from the Rocinante, which is completely different from the Chainsmoker, which is completely different from Drummer's ships. And you can immediately get grounded on what ship, what faction, at least what faction. Because, like the Martian ships are kind of all the same. But like you can definitely tell the difference between these different factions just by the environment. And I think that's really cool. Usually that goes to the planets too. Like you can tell if you're on Earth or the moon or Mars without them telling you too, just because based on what materials they're constructed in, whether they have windows and have blue skies outside, that kind of thing. And I think that's really cool. And a lot of the shows that do, like Game of Thrones had the same way, like every single location had to have its own cultural look and feel, because you go around to so many different locations, you would quickly get lost without the intro and without those visual motifs. And also, since real life works that way, like you can kind of tell whether you're in an American city or a European city or an Asian city or an African city without too much trouble based on what companies are there, what the buildings look like, what languages there are. Like that kind of adds a little bit of world building. Like everything doesn't look the same. Like even in the 21st century, everything's been so fucking homogenized. It's still pretty easy to tell where you're at based on like signage and stuff. So I think it's useful, and it also makes the world feel hell of a lot more real.
Yeah.
I love the scene. There's so much, like, I fucking love Drummer so much, where like Karal tries to tell her that you can't save Naomi, and she just spins around and is like, watch me. And then her almost attacking her when she's like starts talking about Naomi, because one thing we know about Naomi, like this is something that's established very early in the season. They're like very good friends, and they have a mutual respect for each other.
Drummer and Naomi.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just asking. Naomi. You didn't say. Okay. And the stuff like that Philip has been researching about them, right? That really brought them closer together. The stuff on the behemoth, whatever, from the season 3, all that stuff has made them very close.
Yeah. And she almost attacks Karal. She's stopped by her XO. What's her name?
Oksana, I think. Yeah.
Oksana. And then Drummer goes to her quarters. Primal screams, as I thought was a pretty incredible performance. And then in desperation seizes the whiskey she was saving for when she, I think at this point, killed Marco. And she just fucking chugs it. Like drinks it like it's an oxygen bottle. And she's on the chain smoker in between holes. And it's great. And then there's a little, like, I even thought the end scene is really great. The way that, Karal's kind of like, trying to peel off another one of Drummer's faction by saying, let me tell you the real story about Naomi Nagata and this dead bitch and all that. And then Naomi from the grave has her retort that she's still alive. Really cool. Really cool. Like I said, four pretty big things that bothered me on further thought about the Naomi parts of this episode. But overall, when they cut, like when because I was still trying to kind of figure out what was going on, and then when they played that altered distress message over the credits, I thought it was genius. So
maybe get the slow zoom in on the ring gate, one of the ring gates. Very cool. Man, I still I think this sequence of scenes with Drummer and Karal is what's going to eventually push Drummer over into Michio Pa territory. And I don't want to say too much, but the people who have read the books are ready. We're ready for it. Michio, baby, Michio. We want it.
Bacho Peru. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what the fuck any of this shit means.
To you, but
I've steadfastly refused to Google it. I encourage everyone to do that too that hasn't read the books.
Oh yeah, if you haven't read the books,
spoiler.
Don't Google Michio Pa. But I really think that's the way that she's going. She's gonna have. I don't know. What do you think her perspective is at this point, Drummer?
Her perspective?
Yeah, on helping Marco, on getting by, doing what they've got to do.
I think she probably feels a lot like Naomi felt in that airlock. Like, what the fuck am I even? I'm not even a person with my own agency anymore. I'm having everything I love being subverted into everything I hate. Like, what is the point of even going on? Yeah. And I imagine she's going to cling to this spark from Naomi like a drowning person. The real question I have is because like it's almost like it's very analogous to what Holden's got going on in the Rocinante. Like she doesn't have the support of all of her crew to defy Marco. Holden's doesn't have the support of the crew to rescue Naomi from Marco. Mm-hmm. what's going to be the thing that breaks the tension there? Because you got two captains that don't have a united crew behind the purpose that they desperately want to achieve. What breaks that deadlock? It does seem like I said this like 2 episodes ago. It does seem like some combination of the Screaming Eagle, Screaming Firehawk, the Rocinante, and Drummer's fleet. Maybe aided and abetted by the Jupiter and Saturn fleets that are coming by and doing detachments and stuff. Like maybe there's some kind of like all in that can stop Marco in his tracks, but I'm not seeing it, which I'm glad, because I kind of liked when the show surprises me with its cleverness. So
yeah, I mean, at this point, everybody seems to be so far apart, not just like physically, but in a place where none of them are really set up to help each other. You know, because I don't think even if Drummer and Holden and the Screaming Eagle, even if they all come together, I don't think they're any match for Marco's 9+ warships.
There has to be something else that changes the equation for sure.
Yeah, and then Amos, the enforcer of the group, the guy who would normally be getting shit done, is completely out of the picture for them. So everybody's so far apart, both physically and plot wise, that we've only got 2 episodes left. How do they bring this all together by the end of the season?
That's the thing. The 2 episodes, because like you can kind of squint and see, you know, Holden and Bobby and Alex are already so close, as is Naomi. They're like getting closer and closer. Amos is far away, but he's about to get his hands on a suborbital starship. Although, here's another one that bothers me. Why is a ship called a suborbital ship capable of getting to Luna?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Is
maybe
that like
their
more
definition
of like,
is different?
Yeah, it's like, is that suborbital mean like it's not capable of orbiting long term because it doesn't have the supplies necessary? Or is it a statement of its lift capacity? Because like if you can go to the moon, you can certainly achieve Earth orbit.
Right.
Like you got the Delta V, but maybe you don't have the oxygen, water, and food supplies where you can, you know, make a direct burn to Luna and get there. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Like time in the void rated.
How long does it actually take to get to the moon? It's not that long, right?
A couple days, yeah.
You could pocket the amount of food and water you need to get to the moon. I don't know that that's going to be the problem, the limiting factor. But you might be right. Like lift capabilities might be a thing. Like they just don't use them for that because you can only transport a couple few people, whatever.
Yeah, like if they called it like a short haul spacecraft or something, it makes more. But suborbital, it's like I kept on thinking like what the fuck does that even mean? Suborbital.
Yeah.
Like kind of like an aeroplane that can kind of get into the stratosphere, like, but clearly can go to the moon. But yeah, he's about to get his hands on, which brings him back into the orbit of Christian. And you can kind of see, but yeah, 2 episodes left. Holy hell, they're going to have to move a lot. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this: where are they in turn? Like, are they about like 80% through the book at this point?
Yeah. So they're in some ways they're beyond the end of book 5. In other ways, they're definitely approaching the end of it. So yeah.
Oh, that seems crazy. Okay. Well, then I'm not, because I was thinking like, if you were like, oh yeah, they actually have like a half of the, because that's happened before. Like, I remember you thinking there's no fucking way they can finish book 3 with only half of season 3 to work with, and by God, they did it. So it sounds like they got a different problem where, I just don't see the solution yet.
Yeah,
it's a multiple body problem. I don't have the calculator necessary to calculate it.
We're getting there for sure. I could definitely see them wrapping this up in 2 episodes, but like the logistics of it are going to be tricky because there's so many things pushing people apart or keeping people from their goals.
I think that's it for the episode discussion. What's the situation for feedback this week, Jim?
There is no situation. We recorded 507 podcast yesterday. And we did all of our feedback that we had in. Time. Yeah. You guys will hear these a week apart, but in actuality, they happened back-to-back days. So we don't have any actual feedback. I think that's pretty much going to be the case going through the next episode as well. But we will definitely have some feedback to talk about on the finale episode, because that we're probably almost certainly going to have to record in real time. It'll be delayed a little bit compared to how we've been releasing these because we don't have a screener for that yet. And that may change, but I'm not banking on it. So what we're probably going to have to
Yeah.
do is wait until the finale drops on Amazon Prime, then watch it, then do all our research and come back and record a podcast a day or two later. So,
and unless, because it's possible, because right now what he's saying is we've got screeners for the 9 episodes leading up to finale, but you know, we have not gotten the finale episode.
Right.
It's possible that they'll drop that in the last week. I know sometimes they leave the last episode, the finale, but sometimes they just never provide a screener for the last episode. And if that's the case, then we'll probably be a couple days behind. We won't be like Johnny on the spot like we've been this season. And the feedback for the last 2 episodes will probably be somewhat in arrears. Like it'll be the feedback for the week before, because we're back to like kind of recording them a week in advance. So,
and if you do watch the finale episode and our podcast is not already out, go ahead and send your feedback in, because we will be recording a podcast shortly after.
Yeah. And you do that at expanse@baldmove.com. That's where you want to send the feedback. We will read it at some point. It's just, it might be last week's on this week's episode, if that makes sense. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Belt to Loda. Really appreciate you listening, and we can't wait to see what happens next week. Until then, we'll be back next week, I should say. Don't forget, this week, Sci-Fi Sunday, where we watch 2 episodes of Star Trek, and this week's all-new episode of The Expanse every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/baldmove. It's always a good time. Hope to see you there. Until next time, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
Later.